The Doors from 1991, directed by Oliver Stone, starring Val Kilmer, Meg Ryan, Kyle MacLachlan, and Kevin Dillon. The IMDb plot summary: the story of the famous and influential 1960s rock band The Doors and its lead singer and composer Jim Morrison, from his days as a UCLA film student in LA to his untimely death in Paris, France, at the age of 27 in 1971. So, like this, the name of the movie and the plot summary says, The Doors is a band in the 60s, in just in case folks haven't heard of them before. Jim Morrison was their lead singer and did die young. I had been someone who grew up with The Doors. I feel maybe this is just an American thing or maybe just a generational thing. Like, at least people that I knew, men and women, sort of seemed to go through a phase of like 2 or 3 years where all they were was obsessed with The Doors and Jim Morrison, and then you kind of grow out of it. But it's an important period in adolescence, I feel like, the Doors phase. So I definitely had that extended even into college for me. And this was before the age of Wikipedia and, you know, easy access to knowledge of what the true story was. So I only knew kind of about legends about what, you know, his life and kind of who he was. And what this movie did, I think, is kind of double down on that, the mythos. The movie definitely tries to elevate Jim Morrison and The Doors to this mythic status, which I think also matches a lot what Jim Morrison was even doing in his own life at the time, with lying about his parents being killed early and telling these tales of Indian spirits entering him when he saw an auto accident as a kid. So it's kind of fits into the ethos, even though, again, it's not true. And I'm just curious if you went through a Doors phase over in India at any point, or maybe you will after seeing this film. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't go through that phase, but obviously, familiar with their music. Maybe came to their music a little bit later in life, I would say.
In high
But
school?
yeah, but had a very similar sort of thing that for a moment it felt like, oh, this is like so cool. And then you sort of just,
You're out of it.
move. Yeah, exactly. But I never watched the movie, always wanted to watch it. So it was fun to get into it. Yeah, it's a trippy movie,
Mm-hmm.
to say the least.
Yeah.
But I guess before I share my own opinions, what did you think of the movie?
Yeah, so when I saw it as a high schooler, like when I was into the band, again, it added to the mythos that I had. Like,
Yeah.
oh wow, it's making them seem even kind of cooler. And then I went through a period when, the internet was around, and I kind of bought a bunch of books on the Doors, and the Doors themselves, even actually the surviving 3 members, when the movie came out, attacked it for being
Yeah.
very untrue. That wasn't the Jim Morrison that they knew. He was not this crazy guy, and he was, a lot very funny and all these sort of things. So then my opinion on the movie kind of then soured a little bit. And then now I've kind of come back around to realizing that's not really what Oliver Stone was trying to do. He was trying to capture a feeling of what the music meant to him and all the Doors fans. And that, I think, what this movie is, a trip. Like, the whole movie has a vibe to it, and the cinematography has got these crazy, like, floaty cameras that are moving all around. There's a lot of really sharp use of color in this film. There's a lot of reds. They like the scenes very red. And it does feel like when you're watching the movie, at least to me, as someone who is still a fan of the Doors, it feels like you're listening to a Doors song as you're watching the movie, which I think is why the power of this film, and that's kind of really what it was more trying to capture than it is, oh, this is exactly what Jim Morrison's life was actually like. Maybe the issues with this are more around the things they show in the movie that he actually didn't do. Like, he didn't try to burn his girlfriend in her closet or attack her at Thanksgiving. Like, it does sort of show him a little more chaotic in a negative way, or try to commit suicide at one point. Like, those things did not happen, and maybe that's why the band got so upset. But I kind of get the artist's intention a little bit more now, and I've come back around to appreciate what the state this movie puts you in. And one thing I'll say too before that, I'm curious to hear what you thought as well. The movie came out in 91, and I think this set a template for the cookie cutter, like, movie biopic era that we're living in now. And
especially musicians.
Yes, the music biopic movie has been done to death over the last 20 years, and I think is always going to be with us. Not that this was the first one of those, but I think that this movie set the template moving forward, and the newer movies are less good. Did you kind of get that feeling too when you were watching it?
And that was sort of part of it. Like, I totally agree that the movie is a vibe. It's a fever dream and trippy, and gets the essence of the music and this person really well. But because this template of the tortured musician, fame gets him, and then he ruins everything, and the people around him, is just so been there, done that. And to me, it was sort of, that was the feeling, like going back and watching sort of original quote unquote text and feeling like, oh, I've already seen this like a million times.
Right.
So that was not fun. Like, if anything, I guess what we were saying earlier, if the intention was kind of a fever dream vibe kind of thing, I would have appreciated perhaps just to take a slice of his life. And I think this movie suffers because it is painting a broader narrative, right? From, childhood to his death, literally.
Mm-hmm.
You then can't help but not question that, oh, did this really happen? And all the
Right.
narrative beats, they start to take, greater space in your head than they're meant to.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish this was a much shorter movie. It's too long to the point that I had to fast forward like so many of the performances. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I can't
Oh,
watch another more thing of this. Although the
yeah.
last performance with all the extras and in the big, that was amazing. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, kudos to that time to do this for real. I mean, but I don't even know how many extras they have. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I gotta say, actually, those scenes to me are the strength of the movie. The performance scenes, not only because Val Kilmer's actually singing, that's his actual
Right.
singing. He's
Yeah.
not dubbing or anything. But
Yeah.
you really, and I bet it was not. And actually, the Doors concerts were not like um, how they
Mm.
were depicted in this movie. They were not as crazy and as much kind of wild stuff going on. But in my mind, that's always what, when I was listening to the music, oh, I wish I could go back into a Doors show. I bet it would be like this. And then you see that and you're like, oh my God, that's sort of what I would want. So I love that they can capture that of like in my mind what a Doors show would have been like in like
True.
1968, even though again, like the band is like, this is not how these shows were. Like actually, Jim never performed topless. And there's multiple scenes in this movie where he's performing without his shirt on. It's funny too. I even had an action figure of Jim Morrison. Again, I was obsessed with the Doors for a while, and it was him with his shirt off singing in a microphone, which he never did. He never had his shirt off on any performance. He always had his shirt on. So it's this sort of like legend versus reality, and
Right.
I prefer the legend sometimes.
No,
But
it's cool.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah. Because again, if you want to know who they were, exactly,
right.
go watch a documentary or read a book on them.
Right.
So,
Which there is a
yeah.
great actual Doors documentary that Johnny Depp
Yeah.
narrates from the last 10 years. I think it was like 2010, 2011.
Right.
That is very good, just as a straightforward examination of who the Doors were. But to me, this movie is about like what they represented and how they felt. Quick anecdote too. I went to his grave in Paris when I was in college
Mm.
for the very first and only time in my life so far, like a spiritual experience where I felt I could feel him
Wow.
below me. It was crazy. But it was like an out of body weird sort of thing that I felt just being there when I know he's under there, and it's weird. But I think this movie
Wow.
feels like that to me too. When I watch this, it's like I feel a spirit sort of entering me from watching the film, like I did when I visited his grave in Paris.
Groovy, dude.
There,
Groovy.
there you go.
Yeah, if only this movie was shorter, I
Sure,
think.
no, that's fair. I'm
This
not.
would
Yeah,
be an
yeah.
amazing masterpiece for what it's trying to do and what its
Mhm.
intent is. The other thing I would say is, I mean, you already mentioned it. Val Kilmer is amazing in
Oh
this
yes,
movie. Like, this
so
is
good.
probably in the top tier kind of real life person biopic performances, I think,
Mhm.
because it's not even it's not an impersonation, it's not even a transformation, it's sort of just being this person totally. I mean, not
Oh
that I
yeah.
know how the real guy was, but I can't imagine anybody else. He's great. On the polar opposite side, Meg Ryan, very bad casting. I was
Yeah,
like, from the first scene, I was like, wait, you're in this movie?
yeah,
And you're in a different movie. You're in Sleepless in Seattle in this
yeah.
movie. You're walking around with your hair, and that was not great.
I know that her estate
I
was
know. I read
working
about
with
that
them.
too.
Yeah, and
They
they
wanted her
wanted
to be put as an angel or
right,
something, which
exactly.
they got the right person for
I was
that.
just gonna say that's why they cast Meg Ryan, who
Yeah.
was the angel of the moment at the time.
Yeah.
But I agree, the performance is actually outside of Val Kilmer in this movie all up, even like Kyle MacLachlan and
Doesn't have much to do.
they,
He's
they
yeah.
seem like parodies of it's
Yeah.
like you're watching a TV movie in
Yeah.
terms of the level of parody that they're doing, except
Yeah.
for Val, who is like you said, just not even it's
It's an out of body
transformative.
experience.
It really is.
Yeah.
So he sort of wipes the rest of the acting for this movie that is very cookie cutter and not that. Yeah, I mean the movie's not great or one of Oliver Stone's best, but I do think it just for me, just with the association with the Doors, I think it just cements their legacy in my mind.
Yeah. And the smacking tongue Andy Warhol. I'm like, what are you doing? What is
Crispin
happening?
Crispin
Kristen,
Glover's Andy Warhol is inspired
oh,
Cassidy. I will say that though.
hilarious. I had to rewind that scene. I was like, what? What is happening? What are you doing with your tongue? Is
Yeah.
this normal. It's clear.
That is one of the true actual things that did happen in real life. Like he did give Jim Morrison this gold telephone for some reason that no one really even understood. So there are some, true things in this movie. It's only like the weirdest things that usually end up being true. I think this movie's one of those. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.